والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. سبحانك لا فهم لنا إلا ما فهمتنا إنك أنت الجواد الكريم. وقل ربي زدني علما. So continuing the discussion, which is a very important discussion, very central to our success in this life and the next, our relationship with wealth. And that's what the sort of modernity is totally based upon. It's all about wealth, material possessions. So here, Islam obviously looks at this with balance. As we've said many times, the human being is a synergy of physical and spiritual existence. If there's not a balance, then you have an imbalance. In imbalance, you have all types of diseases, problems, chaos, travail. So in this chapter, Bayan al-Dhamm al-Hirs. So basically, this is a sort of detailed explanation regarding the derogation of avarice, covetousness, desire, wish for the world, sort of unbridled, lower desires for the world and the worldly. And the praise and commendation of satisfaction, contentment, being content, the wonderful thing. And al-yas, yas basically means to be, hopeless. In other words, whatever we have, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, we're content with that, and we'd have no hope for more than that. Then you'll always be happy. Right? There's an interesting story that maybe some of you have heard that. There was a fellow, he had a little cart, and he used to sell the things on that cart. So somebody said, you're happy with this little cart and you sell the things and you make a very small amount. Why don't you, hire 2-3 other carts and set them up, and then you can have and you can expand, scale up your business, have 3 or 4 carts rather than one. It's okay. So he did that. Then after, he got 3 or 4 carts, then he said, well, carts are okay, but suppose you had shops. Then you'll get more customers, you get more attraction, and you can advertise. Okay. And now you have shops, here in Orange County, but you can have shops all over California. Oh, okay. Then what'll happen, So anyway, he went on and on and on and on. At the end of the day, he found out that what he had when he had that cart, he ceases to have when he has a global, financial network. The peace and contentment, and actually at the end of the day, he ate the same amount, he wore the same amount of clothes, he ended up with the same basic human needs, which were being fulfilled very easily and comfortably and stress-free with his little cart, and now he's got the worry of the whole world on his head, So, the scheme of things, where Allah has put us and given us, that's fine, it's more than sufficient for us, if we but knew. So, here is mentioned that, as in our tradition, he says, Al-Faqr Mahmud. Poverty is something which is praiseworthy. People don't like that, anymore. Particularly in Southern California. Nobody wants to hear, being poor is something praiseworthy, or it's a good attribute. What do you mean? Well, look at our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Was he rich or poor? In terms of real intrinsic wealth, he was the richest man on the planet that ever lived. In terms of physical, whatever came in this hand, it was released. He never used to keep something for the night. In fact, if more wealth probably came into the hand of the Prophet ﷺ than probably any human being ever. And sometimes he would give 100 camels away. He would give a whole valley full of sheep to someone, to just bring them close to Islam. And it was his habit that whatever type of wealth would come into his possession, he wouldn't sleep in the night until it was all distributed. That's quite a different, concept than our contingency planning that we, no harm in that. But let's look at the Prophet ﷺ. How did he live? So that's how he lived, and that's how our pious ancestors lived, and they were much more intelligent and much more goes than Allah. Okay, in any case, So he says, so being the poverty, and this is not poverty that you were forced into. This is by choice. In other words, Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam would take, and our pious ancestors to take what was necessary for them, and the rest would be spent off. Okay. However, this will be a praiseworthy situation, provided the person who is experiencing that, that poverty, is content with it. And being content with that is that he's not looking into seeing what everybody else has and wanting what they have. Right? So he says, وَلَا حَرِيصَ الْاِكْتِسَابِ مَالْ كَيْفَ كَانَ. And also, he's not worried what other people have. And he's also not trying to get wealth or money any way that he possibly can. He's content with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him, and he's content with earning that in the proper channels which Sharia approves of. And in a hadith of Sahih Muslim, from Sayyidina Amr ibn As radiallahu ta'ala, he says that Rasulullah says, قَدْ أَفْلَهَ مَنْ أَسْلَمَ وَرُزِقَ كَفَافًا وَقَنَّعُهُ اللَّهُ بِمَا آتَاهُ. He said that person has really succeeded who has surrendered. It doesn't, aslama basically means accepted Islam. But it doesn't mean simply, entering officially into the fold. It means aslama, he actually surrenders. He surrenders himself, his desires, his whole agenda to the agenda of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Accepts Islam in the true sense, surrenders. وَرُزِقَ كِفَافًا. And he was given the amount of sustenance which was sufficient for him. If you don't have sufficiency, at least, and there, it's also interesting that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to seek refuge from kufr and faqr. So here we said faqr is praiseworthy. Here Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, I seek refuge from faqr, from poverty. So it can't be the same poverty, could it? So what he's talking about is poverty, meaning we don't have more than what we need. However, poverty meaning that we don't have what we need, that is a problem. And then when people don't have their basic needs, then it can force them, sort of coerce them into situations that otherwise they wouldn't degrade towards, or they wouldn't stoop towards. When a person doesn't have his basic necessities, he, just might take any measure to provide that. So that type of faqr that would, really impact somebody's, deen, that type of faqr, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us all. And in fact, that type of faqr may ultimately lead to kufr. I don't have even my basic needs, and where's the God that's supposed to be, providing for me? And then all these type of things might pop up if in that situation. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from such things. So here, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says the person has been given sufficiency. He has what he needs, not more, not less. وَقَنَّعُهُ اللَّهُ بِمَا آتَاهُ. And this is the key, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes him content with what he has. He might have a little, he's content. He might have a lot, and he's content. He might have a little, and he's not content. He might have a lot, and he's not content. So it's not really about having little or a lot. Whatever Allah has given you, that's what you're going to get, but being content with that, and knowing that since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has destined this portion for you, that's best for you. There's another hadith of Sayyidina Jabir radiallahu ta'ala anhu that is something like this: Al-qana'atu madun la yanfad. That qana', this contentment, is actually a wealth which can never be spent. It's a continuous wealth and a benefit. So if we have that, as some of our pious ancestors used to say, if the kings of our era know what we're experiencing from spiritual joy with our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how we're enjoying our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they would have fought for us. They would have fought to take that away from us. But they can't, So these internal values, this internal wealth is a wealth which is never going to be spent. It's never going to come to an end. It will go on increasing. And after death, it will even be more fruitful. Allahu Akbar. So one of our ancestors, he says, there are three things. If they are, found in an individual, then he has really sound and, complete intelligence. Number one, he knows himself. Arifa nafsahu. He knows himself. What does it mean he knows himself? He knows his own problems. He knows his own weaknesses. He's always focused on his weaknesses. We generally focus on everybody else's. And mine, blind spot. I don't see. So this fellow, he's intelligent because in the end of the day, so what about him and him? What's important is me. How am I and who am I? What am I? And I know myself and I'm constantly observing and analyzing and trying to improve. Number one. Number two, hafidha lisanahu. And he protects his tongue. The tongue wants to just shoot off, controlling of the tongue. Therefore, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, if someone will guarantee to me that he'll control what is between his jaws and between his legs, I guarantee for him paradise. Allahu Akbar. So, second thing, he protects his tongue. Third thing, وَقَنَعَ بِمَا رَزَقَهُ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. And the third thing is that he's content with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him. And some wise person, he said, أَنْتَ أَخُو الْعِزْ مَا الْتَفَحْتَ بِالْقَنَاعِ. You are basically the brother of honor. In other words, you are a person who is going to be honorable as long as you remain with the cloak of contentment. So you'll be honorable as long as you're content. When you're not content, then you're asking for disgrace. So as for the hadith, as for the person who actually is, covetous, full of desire, unbridled desire for the world. So he says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, أيها الناس أجملوا في الطلب فإنه ليس للعبد إلا ما كتب له. He said, "O you people, أجملوا في الطلب." It's a beautiful saying. أجملوا. It comes from Jamal. Jamal is beauty, like Hasan. Like Ahsinu, Ajmilu. It's very similar. Approach the ways and avenues for earning, but approach them in a beautiful way. And the beautiful way is, don't depend on them. Understand that these are only means to an end, which Allah SWT has created, and the end itself is already destined. So take it easy. Relax. Seek your sustenance, which is following you like your shadow, and just go through the motions and do what you have to do, knowing full well that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, grant you what He has destined to grant you, not more and not less. So don't get stressed out about it, which is generally, destroying the minds and the hearts of people today. We have a thing called corporate stress. It's a syndrome. Everyone's looking up. We know about that, right? What's it about? Basically, it's about this, the competitive spirit. I have to, outperform so-and-so or I lose my job. Well, your job is destined and your performance is destined and what you're going to earn is also destined. So, of course, do the things you have to do, yarhamkallah. But don't get stressed out about it, The outcome is in the hand of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Make your effort. The farmer plants the seed, he makes his dua, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who brings out the sprout. And He's the one who brings it to fruition. So similarly. So the hadith, he doesn't understand that. So, so Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, Ajmilu fit talab. So seek your rizq, but seek it in a beautiful way, with a proper mind and heart set. فَإِنَّهُ لَيْسَ لِلْعَبْدِ إِلَّا مَا كُتِبَ لَهُ. There's nothing for the slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala except what Allah has written for him. You're going to get what you're going to get. Relax. This is one of the things that brought me to Islam, by the way. I don't know if I've told you guys that story. So I was in Morocco, and I was actually in Marrakesh, and it was Ramadan also, by the way. And since I'm from California, and a California nature boy, and I used to always like the natural stuff, still do. So I used to always eat dates, still. And so when I got to Morocco, then I wanted to buy dates, so I went to the date market. And I found all of these fellows all assembled in one big market. doesn't make any sense. Everybody's in one market. I mean, that's pretty strange. They all have the same merchandise. They have the same stall, pretty much the same prices. How is everybody going to make any money here? You got hundreds of people who are all there in this one big market. So I thought to myself, well, these poor guys, they're not very educated perhaps, and I'm from the West and I know a little bit more about how things work. So I'm going to be very gracious to give some instruction to some of these fellows, something a little bit about marketing. They should understand that, So I met one of them. I said, okay, I think really it would be much better for you, don't you think so? If rather than you all sitting in one place, how can you all, earn? Why not you find some place in Marrakesh? It's a big city. Find a place where you can sort of go off to the side, find a niche where no other markets, no other date seller is there, and then you can set up shop there, and you'll get all the business of that place. Isn't that a good idea? And so he just looked at me and kind of smiled, like the old uncle, the little kid comes and says, "Uncle, I got this idea," and a very nice boy, very good sonny. So it was kind of like, yeah, okay. And then he says to me, he says, look, he says, if we all scatter all over the universe, or we all sit all in this place, we're going to get what God is destined for us. So relax. I said, wow. This guy, he's, and coming from, my background of, from the hippies and all of that psychology, that philosophy of, good karma and, good vibes and do good comes back. I said, this guy is the hippie number one in the world. This guy is tremendous, And it just really hit me. And look what he's saying. Now imagine in our marketplaces, everybody had this kind of belief set. And all it is Iman bil Qadr. This is one of the articles of faith. Iman bil Qadr. Suppose if we had in our financial institutions, if we had in our marketplaces, if we had this concept